Welcome to Who Made This Mess? Raising Children and Reparenting Ourselves. Here we discuss the joys and challenges of parenting while trying to develop our own self-awareness and self-compassion. Raising children can be messy and so hard, but we believe that as we learn to embrace our own messiness and imperfection, we can learn to show up for our kids and raise a gentler generation.
Hi, welcome back. If this is your first time, I'm Angie.
I'm Shauna.
We're so glad to have you here today.
I almost did a jinx. I almost talked over you there.
That's okay. No problem. No problem. We're excited to actually talk about this topic today. We're going to be talking about gentle parenting.
Yay. What a buzzword.
I know. I feel like this could bring controversy, different many perspectives, I think. So
Absolutely. It's definitely been the parenting trend.
Yeah.
And it's a shift for a lot of people. Gentle parenting is something some people feel great about, and some people, I think it rubs them a little bit the wrong way.
Yep.
So why don't you kind of start, since I'm the parenting passion project person over here, and I've been doing tons of research on parenting over the years. What, as just a parent, what do you think of when you hear gentle parenting?
So when I think of gentle parenting, I'm thinking of the definition of gentle, and I think of just being light. And in a careful way, I guess. And so it includes being very patient. Parenting, as many of you parents out there know, it just takes so much patience and just an extra dose of that. Kindness, just making sure your words are kind in conversation, throughout conversation, and being intentional about that kindness, listening. I think that for myself, when I think of gentle parenting, the biggest thing for me that I need to work on and focus on, and I think is just so important, is the listening part. And then also just forgiveness as well.
Yeah.
And just being forgiving of myself, being forgiving of my family and my children. And so, that's what it looks like to me. I think that gentle parenting is different based on what age your children are. Gentle parenting, I think, would look very different to a 2-year-old, like what you have, where she's still learning her communication, how to communicate what her needs are. And then I have a daughter who's 10 years old and a son who's 9, and at their age, and especially at my daughter's age, it's different with a girl and a boy too, but I noticed that listening part really, really matters, because she's going to be a preteen, and I think that when she becomes a teenager, even more, she might have those feelings of, my parents just don't get it. You see that all the time in TV shows and movies. And so it's my parents, they just don't get it. And I just really want to make sure that she knows that I will take the time to listen. And, when she's thinking, you just don't understand, that I'm taking the moment to ask, help me understand. And not just come in with my own thoughts and views and opinions, because these generations are very different. The things that they're dealing with, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And so I need to be aware of that, accepting of that, and not just, push my agenda in it and ask, help me understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is such a big difference when it comes to gentle parenting. You are not assuming that you are the almighty, that you know everything, and that you are the absolute expert when it comes to how to make decisions in life.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're saying your life is so different than what I experienced, but I care about you and I'm trying to understand you, right? I'm trying.
Yes.
And that's the important part, putting in that that show of I'm caring about you here. So
Right.
like gentle parenting, when we really think about the definition of it and what is this philosophy of gentle parenting, it's when you're looking at the child's individual needs, you're acknowledging and engaging with their emotions, not just their behaviors, but their emotions. And you're looking at their development. So you're making sure that your approach is developmentally appropriate.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So that
so
2
important.
versus 10, right? Very different.
Yeah.
What your expectations would be, what their needs would be, what they care about is really different from those ages. And so, it's looking at all of those things, and there are kind of 4 foundational premises, right? We're thinking about empathy, being able to put ourselves in our child's shoes and consider their position. Respect, so being able to respect them as human beings, respect their needs, listen to them in that way. Understanding, so really thinking about their perspective is valid and you want to try to learn from them and understand from them too, as well as boundaries. And I think that's the part, like people don't always think that gentle parenting has boundaries. And I think that's what makes it different from something like permissive parenting, which we can address a little bit. But
Just a thought on the boundaries. The one thing that I think can get blurred is I want my kid to be my friend. I want my kid to like me. I don't want those like butting head moments. And so you do have to be careful to have the gentleness, have the kindness, but also keep in mind, I am your parent and I do have the authority in this relationship. And so, you want to make sure that you're not blurring the line between friend and parent, because your kids will have friends.
Yeah.
They only have one mom and dad, and you need to be that for them. It's so important. One thing that I had picked up on from the many Disney movies and TV shows that my kids are into at this age, and even growing up, if I think back to the movies that I loved as a kid, typical Disney teen movie, you have groups of friends, you have this one kid that has really quote strict parents that have all the boundaries in place, and this kid is not allowed to do anything, and it seems like their life is going so poorly, like they're just having like the worst upbringing, and then they have the friends or usually there's like one in particular that they just get everything they ever wanted. There's no boundaries, no rules. They seem to have like the most desirable life as a kid or a teen. And you as a viewer, by the end of the movie, there's usually a line in there that says, from the child that gets everything they want, they usually say to the child that has all the boundaries in place, well, I wish my parent was like yours, because your parent really cares about you. I wish my parent cared about me. And so Disney has it right. They know that the parent that has the boundaries is the one that is really showing the appropriate way to care and love. And so I just took from that, myself, that it's like these kids, they have their friends and they want a parent too. You may not feel it in the moment. No, not in the heat of an argument where kid wants something and you're saying no. But in the long term, it's what's necessary and will be appreciated someday.
I think the key is to having appropriate boundaries and a balance in how much you are setting boundaries, because kids really do need choices. They need feelings of self-efficacy, that they can do things on their own, and that we trust them, to listen to themselves and to do the right thing. I think all of those things are important. But there is this idea that kids want to feel safe. And when kids are young, having a parent who sets boundaries helps them to feel safe because they know you're there to protect me. You're there to look out for me. And they might not always like the boundaries. They might push against the boundaries, but your job is to keep them safe. And as you continue to do that, that helps, to build security in them. They know they can go out into the world and explore, and they know they can come back to you as that secure base, right? For them to get that fuel and that strength from. I think I spent a lot of time as a therapist focused on behaviors in kids. And, there's really a shift that gentle parenting has where we're not so focused on punishment when it comes to boundaries. It's really more about discipline. And discipline, it comes from the root word disciples, which sounds a lot like disciple.
It does, yes.
Right? Same root word. So discipline is really about teaching and guiding. Right? So we think about, great leaders that had disciples. We think about Jesus, right? He had disciples, people who were following him. And that's what discipline is. You are the leader and your child is following you. Kids are always learning. They're learning through observation and imitation, right? They are copying you. And so, you're setting boundaries, you're teaching them, you're guiding them through the ways that you're living your life. So the skills that you want them to have, you can foster in them through that modeling principle, right? Setting that good example. But I also think there's more to that, right? Gentle parenting, we're really trying to create more of a partnership with a child. And so that means, that respect for them as human beings, but also giving them choices. I think that's an important skill to learn as a parent. I try to do that with my 2-year-old. So that might mean like choices like, do you want to put on your shirt or your pants first? Every night we do this. I pick out 2 pairs of pajamas. Do you want your dinosaur pajamas or your star pajamas?
That's so good. I learned that late.
It's helpful in giving them that sense of, I have a little bit of control over my life, right? I have a sense of control, but at the end of the day, I'm setting the boundaries to make sure that the opportunities she has to exert her control are appropriate. They're child developmentally appropriate, and they're safe for her to make.
Right.
So, you're allowing them choice, you're allowing them a sense of control, but you're creating the environment in which they have that control.
Like these are 2 perfectly good options, that are fine. Yeah, I learned that later. So it's good that you're doing that already with your 2-year-old, because I know that my kids were older when I read that, probably in a study as well, like that it's important to give them the choices, but you are setting the boundary of what those choices would be from, and even at the when I worked at the preschool, you had the time at the beginning of the day where you had a free choice of what to do out of what was already set up to choose from. And, it's really a neat thing that you can start to do so young.
Yeah, and that will continue, right? As they grow up, those choices will look different. It might be, do you want to do your homework when you get home from school, or do you want to do it after dinner? Right. And so like giving them that sense of ownership over it is going to help them feel more motivated to do it.
Yeah, and an example like that would help with teaching them to manage their time, because they might find, I chose to do my homework after dinner because I didn't want to do it at the moment, but doing it after dinner made it really hard to get back on track and focus in on it. And that was when my favorite TV show came on, and then I missed that. I should have done it right after school or something like that. So it could help them learn from their choice to maybe choose something different next time, or they find out that this was great. I really had a good break, so I was able to focus on my homework, and it took me no time at all.
That's called a natural consequence, right? And I think often we're afraid to let our children experience natural consequences. Yeah. Like we want to just shield them from anything bad that could happen, but they learn from natural consequences, like you said. So maybe, they wouldn't get their homework done, or it would be uncomfortable for them to get their homework done that late. And they might have to go to school the next day with incomplete or like subpar homework. And as the parent, you have to sit with that discomfort of like, oh, I let them like be less than perfect. I let them fail in a way.
Yep. And whenever we decided to talk about this, I thought it was so important. And as well as kind of asking ourselves, why don't we as adults choose to gentle parent? Like, what is holding us back from those things? And one of the things that I had felt was a reason would be fear, and fear of a lot of things, actually. Fear of, especially like as they grow up and get older, fear of what they'll become. Are you going to be a good human when you grow up, or are you going to be out there treating other people terribly? Are you going to make the same mistakes that I had? And so we can parent without gentleness because we're fearful of mistakes that we made, or fearful of the mistakes that they'll make. And so it's just important to ask yourselves, what is holding you back? What causes you not to gentle parent? And I think that can be really helpful. I know it's helpful for me, even just down to like the consequences. I don't want them to have consequences for not doing their homework. And again, like, we've talked before about our worth being in our child's behavior. You not getting your homework done the next day at school, not turning it in completed, to me is a reflection of my parenting. And I have to be okay with understanding that it's not a reflection of my parenting. And I have to be okay with the fact that maybe others will think that, and maybe some will be like, well, why didn't they do their homework? Why didn't their parent have them do their homework? It's a household issue,
I think that fear of judgment coming in, right? That is a reason why people might not practice gentle parenting. I think, other people in your life also might have that influence, right? So, different generations might not understand your gentle approach. And so if your child is misbehaving, grandparents or aunts and uncles might come into the picture and be like, that kid, they just need some punishment. They just need some consequences. You hear people say they just need a good whooping, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, because in previous generations, they wanted to keep their kids safe and they didn't know how to do it. And they thought that physical discipline was going to be the way to help their kids grow up to be safe and respectful. Right. The research says that actually doesn't work, right? That's not what spanking does, but we'll save that topic for maybe something else. But, when it comes to influences from other people, sometimes we do feel embarrassed, we feel shamed. Our kids' behavior sometimes, they can be embarrassing. Your kid tantrums in the middle of a store. You start thinking like, oh my gosh, everyone's looking at me. They're going to think I'm such a bad parent. I have this thought all the time when my child is not like perfectly well behaved. I'm like, oh, if only they knew that I teach parenting. Like, what would they think of me? Right.
And, you don't want to, you don't want to give correction out of fear, that it's not going to work. You have to be intentional about, this is why you have this consequence. This is what your behavior should be in the future and stuff like that. Like, and really not just, I think that in the abrupt moment, you just want it to stop. And, there's every household has their own choice of how to make the behavior stop, but then you have to follow up and address the moment. You have to address the behavior, what's incorrect, and move forward from that. But a lot of the times it's just like in the moment, that that quick moment of this is going to stop right now, and then like there's no follow-up. And I think that that's where it can be harmful in the long term, and it's not going to get the outcome you want anyway as a parent. So
yeah, those teachable moments often do have to come if we're going to talk about them when everyone is calm, right? That's when kids learn. That's when we as adults learn. You know, we have to be calm in our bodies to actually keep that information in our long-term memory. And I think too, you know, I used to be really focused in on like behaviors and getting outcomes with children. I think, you know, a lot of our mental health field is designed that way. You know, do you have a measurable goal? And strategies that we would use are based on behaviorism. And so it's, you know, cause and effect, you know, it's using ignoring, it's using lots of like positive rewards or negative consequences. And, you know, I did that kind of treatment for many years. And I think our outcomes were like, kids should be obedient 75% of the time to a given command. And that's fine, right? But what I was learning is parents were coming in to say, my kid doesn't know how to take care of their emotions. They're out of control. They're hitting, they're yelling, they're screaming. You know, they never listen to me. And so I was helping kids learn how to be compliant, but I wasn't seeing the results with them learning to self-regulate, right? To really learn how to calm their emotions down, to process their emotions when you're dealing with really behavioral approaches like, you know, timeout. They were learning to comply without learning how to really regulate their emotions.
Because emotions are so important, and emotions aren't wrong. You have to process them. And yeah, you know, from what I'm hearing, it's like you want to go through the behavior, you want to go through the process of going through your emotions, processing them while complying, but sometimes are you forced to just comply and then not deal with them, and then you as an adult don't know how to deal with your emotions because you were just told to ignore them, to put them away, they don't matter, you know. And your emotions do matter.
Absolutely. And we have to learn how to recognize them, not just shut them down. And I think that's what's really beautiful about gentle parenting, and one of the reasons it was so attractive to me is that gentle parenting is about acknowledging those emotions and okaying those emotions, right? And so instead of just like saying, oh, you're upset, I'm going to ignore you until you show me the appropriate behavior, and then I will give you my attention again. It's more about, oh, I see that you're really upset. You seem like you're really sad. For my daughter, she can talk a little bit about things, but it's still really hard. You know, she doesn't developmentally have all of that vocabulary to talk about what is going on for her. And so, you know, even today, I had an opportunity to practice some gentle parenting, and it was hard. It was really hard. She was really upset. She just kind of was having a really rough morning, and I felt a pull to just be like, oh my gosh, I am running late. I need to get you to do this, this, and this. And we were able to have a moment. She did not want to put her shirt on. She did not want to get her diaper changed. Like, she was just really having a hard time. And I labeled that for her. You know, I was able to say, I was calm enough to say, because I think I knew I was coming here and I better be on my best behavior, that like, you know, oh, I see, Etta, you're really upset right now. Yeah, you're having a really tough time because, you know, you really wanted to watch a video on mommy's phone, and I'm trying to get you dressed so we can go, you know, see your friend. And yeah, this is really hard. I'm here with you. And she didn't always want me. Like, she didn't want me right there with her. But eventually my sweet little girl came over and she just gave me a big hug and she cried in my arms and I scratched her back, right? And she calmed down and she was still having a tough time. I said, what's going on? It seems like maybe you're in some pain. Her mouth was hurting her because she's teething, right? So I was able to see what was the need. Right. I was able to slow down, to really give her some time to feel those feelings.
Right.
And I think I will not do that 100% of the time. I won't. And nobody will. And if they tell you they do, then they're either lying or heavily medicated. And so we're not going to be perfect.
Right.
But sometimes we can get it right and we can let them know we see them and we're there for them.
And that's really important to have taken that time. And I think that sometimes as parents, we think that it will take too much time, but that was probably only a few minutes, maybe. It may be longer, maybe less, and each time would be different. But you let her know in that moment that this was a safe space for her emotions, and that you were safe. Yeah. And so, I think that we can ignore the fact that it would only take a few moments to reset this. Let's have a different outcome,
Yeah. And it's an investment in your relationship with your child because, she's young now and she's still, learning so many things about communication. But, if she can learn that she can come to me with her feelings, imagine as she gets older how beneficial that is going to be for me to be able to parent her well, right? Yeah. When she feels like she can come to me when she's a teenager to talk about the bullying that's going on at school, or a boy pressuring her to do things that she doesn't want to do, right? If we can have that kind of open communication starting it now, or starting it at any point where you decide to change your approach and build that trust again, right? I think it's small moments now. It's about wanting the phone when I took the phone away, or having to get your diaper changed, right? It's these little everyday things, but that lays a foundation for her, and honestly, it lays a foundation for me because I really wanted to do this approach, and I started trying to think this way when she was just an infant to retrain myself, because I did not receive gentle parenting, right? Most of us in our 30s did not receive gentle parenting. And I did not always feel like it was okay for me to have my feelings. And so even when she was upset, when I would change her diaper, I would try to tell myself, okay, this is an opportunity to practice this. Yeah, this is uncomfortable. I know you're uncomfortable right now. Mommy's changing your diaper. I'm going to, wipe you out. I'll get you warmed up really quickly here, right? And so practicing that rather than just saying oh, you're okay. You're okay. Don't cry.
Yeah,
right?
I had to learn the you're okay. I said that all the time. I said it all the time, and I still catch myself saying it. You're okay. And it's maybe they're not okay in this moment. That's what they're trying to tell me. And I'm sure by saying you're okay in the way that I'm saying it, in the way that I'm saying you're okay, I'm ignoring their reaction, their emotion in that moment. And so I can assure them that they're safe, that they are okay, but just the way that I'm going to go about it needs to come with more kindness behind it. And I don't always get it right. And it's so important for me to be forgiving. I said forgiveness is part of gentle parenting to me. And it's forgiveness towards them, the mistakes that they might make along the way, and forgiveness for myself for the mistakes that I'll make along the way, and just being super, super mindful of it. And just know that gentleness is important. I think that there will be some that think that gentle parenting is just too soft. And when we talk to our kids in a light, more calming, soothing voice, especially with, a 2-year-old. Now, there's certain ways I'll talk to my kids, and it's not going to be the same as how I talk to them at 2 years old. But gentleness doesn't lack firmness. Yeah. And so you have to know when those moments are, and be, again, mindful of it, because our God is gentle. Gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit, and it is important, and it comes right with self-control. And it's how our God is in his character as well. He's gentle, but he's firm, right? And so we have to use that model. It's right there for us all throughout the Bible. And again, like just going back to the mindfulness, the intentional part. And yeah, it takes work, but you will see the benefits of it. I can assure you, like there's not many things that I'll like confidently say this will be your outcome, but I know that if you really put effort and mindfulness into it, you will have positive outcome.
Absolutely. So that's actually backed up by the research, right? And so there are a couple of different ways that it's looked at in the research. There's generally 4 parenting styles, the way that researchers categorize this. And so it's a spectrum from low responsiveness to high responsiveness, and low control to high control. And I think the way that we look at control in the research is not just like controlling their behaviors and making them do things, but I think it falls into that category of setting boundaries, having expectations, giving that leadership and guidance to children. And so when we look at parenting that has high control with low responsiveness, that is what we call authoritarian. That's like the dictator, right? My way or the highway, right? You are going to do this. And often that's driven by that fear, right? I have to control you, but I don't really know what to do with your emotions. And so forget about those. I can't really engage with you around that. I don't have understanding for that. And then we have high responsiveness, lots of empathy and understanding, but low control, low expectations, low involvement, and that we call permissive parenting. Do whatever you want. I'm your friend. I care about your feelings, right? But you can do whatever you want, and they don't get that guidance from a parent. I think, and then we have low responsiveness, low control is just neglect, right? Like I am not there for you at all. I'm too busy doing whatever I'm doing to really give you that attention. When we have high responsiveness and high control or high boundaries, that's called authoritative parenting. And I think that gentle parenting is really kind of like a subtype under authoritative parenting. I think there are more of the controlling behavioral parenting styles that also do fall under authoritative parenting. I think gentle parenting is a little bit lower on that control, but in a way that really helps children to develop emotion regulation skills. So it's not permissive.
Right.
It's there with those boundaries and with that support. I think for most of us, we practice kind of mindless parenting. We do what we experienced, right? We tend to recreate whatever our parents did to us, whatever our caregivers did for us. And if we can make that shift into more mindful parenting, being, aware of what we're doing, thinking before we act, having that self-regulation, that is going to help us to have the better child-parent relationship. It's going to help us to have healthier kids, more confident kids. It's going to make us less stressed as parents when we have that mindfulness and that self-awareness and that self-control. I think it's a barrier to gentle parenting is our own emotion regulation. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not building up our own emotional resources, we're not going to be able to share our calm with our kids, right? We can't do that if we're not in a place. And so it is important to be taking care of yourself as part of this, approach to parenting.
Yeah, so important. Yeah. I agree with the I think gentle parenting can be taken as just like soft parenting, like you're not really like permissive. And so, it is important to understand that we don't mean like no rules, no, and that we also don't mean just my way or the highway. They have to have respect. They have to know you're the authority. You do have the final say, but it with love. And so, I agree. I agree so much with what you said about the differences.
Yeah. So slowing down with your parenting to engage with their emotions. And at the end of the day, you might still set that boundary, right? But you're listening and you're understanding them. As they get older, they're going to have different choices.
Yeah.
Right now, with young kids, it might be simple choices. It definitely can be something, I think, that you practice throughout the ages. And I think it's something that will help us to all engage in healthier relationships overall.
Right. I agree.
Well, I think that's about it for gentle parenting for today, but this is something that we care about and we're going to talk about in future episodes.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you like this discussion, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. Please weigh in on it. We would love to hear from you as well. Again, if you have any topics that you'd like us to touch on, please email us. We'd love to hear from you at whomadethismesspod@gmail.com. And you can also find us on Instagram at whomadethismesspodcast. Shauna can be found at her own Instagram
at The Nerdy Nurturer.
And I can be found at The Mixed Up Marriage Podcast or Robinson Right Now.
And if you like this podcast today, please give us a raving review.
Yes.
Help other people find it, share it. This is a really important topic, and we're glad to have you in our community. Thanks for being here.
See you next time.
Bye.